Welcome to the ADAS Empowered Podcast. This is the show where collision repair professionals, calibration techs, insurers, and OEMs come together to stay ahead of the curve. Each episode, we're going to dive into the latest and advanced driver assistance systems, exploring emerging technologies, calibration best practices, and evolving industry standards. Whether you're in the shop, in the field, or in the boardroom, we're your go-to source for thought leadership, collaboration, and real-world insights to drive safer and more efficient repairs. Let's get empowered together. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this next episode of the ADAS Empowered Podcast. I am your host, Joel Adcock. I'm Director of Partnerships at Rev ADAS. I am really excited to have two colleagues of ours from here at Rev joining us on the podcast today. Greg Rymuth and Will Govan from Triad Diagnostic Solutions. Gentlemen, thank you for hopping on the podcast today. For those of you out there that have not had a chance to subscribe to the podcast, you can find it on any of your favorite podcast channels or streaming services between Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon. We also have a link out on the ADAS Empowered community to our YouTube page, which includes all of the previous recordings. Not had a chance to get caught up on those, I encourage you to do so. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get kicked off here today. Again, gentlemen, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to our conversation here over the next 45 minutes or so. But if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, Greg, I'll have you go ahead and go first, and then we'll follow up with Will, and we will some ADAS topics here.
Sure, Joel. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity. I'm Greg Rymuth, president of Triad Diagnostics. We opened up the company about 8 years ago now, and we have been growing ever since, and very happy to have this opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Joel, for having us. I'm Will Govan. I'm the inside sales manager here at Triad Diagnostic Solutions. I am also an ADAS specialist here as well.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys. So our topic today, in really the general context of the conversation, is ADAS equipment, tools and things to help perform calibrations, amongst some other things that you guys also provide for services. So it is a hot topic. No matter where you go, there are a bevy of repair shops, whether mechanical or collision or anywhere in between, that are actively investigating what does it look like to do, calibrations now, whether that be static, dynamic. Is there a percentage of, calibrations that the shop can bring in-house? Obviously, as the prevalence of ADAS sophistication continues to grow, and shops are being more cognizant of the fact that a scan is not a calibration, and continue to push the education narrative. I thought it'd be a good chance to bring you guys both in, as this is really your wheelhouse, right? Is being able to provide service and support, and obviously from the equipment side into to shops. So better to have you guys talk about what those expectations look like, what questions shops are asking, what are the considerations, and sort of like what's the process you guys use to to kind of put shops in the right package of different equipment, features, so on and so forth. So we'll kind of dive into that a little bit as well. But Greg, I wanted to start with you, if you could. I know you mentioned Triad's been around for about 8 years. Give us a little background, I guess, maybe a deeper dive in terms of like what services do you guys provide? I know ADAS is one piece of that, but
Yep.
it's pretty wide ranging and in terms of like what you guys do and who you service.
Yeah. So I've been in commercial vehicle and automotive diagnostics in some way, shape, or form. Going on about 20 years now. Actually launched the commercial vehicle program when I was national sales director at Medco back in the mid 2000s. Went on to be senior vice president at Oregon Systems, which is a big commercial vehicle diagnostic software company, still around today and doing. And like I said, about 8 years ago, we opened up Triad, mainly focused at the time on commercial vehicle and automotive diagnostics, off highway diagnostics, um, ag equipment, even marine. And around 2000 or so, we were an Autel distributor at the time, focusing mostly on commercial vehicle and automotive. And we really started to see the ADAS calibration market growing tremendously, and the early adopters obviously were the windshield guys, right? They had to have the equipment. They were the ones who were the ones buying it first. And I really didn't know anything much about it. And we really pride ourselves on being experts at the product. So we did a lot of research and we worked closely with the Autel team. We worked with some consultants. They came in and did a lot of work with us just to get us up to snuff on the actual opportunities in the market, the different products, the different types of calibrations, all the different things that we needed to know to be successful, and make good recommendations to customers. And then, fortunately, Will was already in my sales operations team and jumped in and said, "Hey, I want to be the guy." And he has been the guy. I mean, I would put him up against anybody in the industry as far as his knowledge on ADAS calibration equipment and qualifying customers. He's just taken it and run with it in a tremendous way, and we're really lucky to have him on our team.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the opportunity within the glass space, it seemed to be really that initial broad reach into the ADAS side and the forward facing cameras. I mean, it presented opportunities that glass folks saw, like visually saw, right? And now they're like, well, what do we need to do with these? So they started researching it a little bit further into it. That's great. I mean, obviously, Will, from your perspective, I'm curious, what did that learning curve look like initially for you? I mean, as I like to say, if you've not spent any time in this industry, it's really hard to understand, and you get into the complexities of ADAS technology and understanding really how it works, and then obviously from the equipment side, what did that learning curve look like for you, and like how do you kind of stay ahead of that curve today?
Yeah, it's a great question, Joel. As Greg kind of touched on, I mean, Alltel has been tremendous at supporting us through this entire process. This was uncharted territory for all of us. And obviously, myself included, I'm relatively new to the industry. I've been doing this about 4 years now. We had tremendous support from their team and the ADOS reps on their team. And they really took me under their wing. And there was a lot of dumb questions that I had to go to them and ask. And Greg kind of threw me into the fire, taking all the phone calls. And, so I just started learning more and more throughout my various customer interactions, and then, sometimes I wouldn't know the answer, say, "Hey, Mr. Customer, I gotta get back to you on that," and I'd, make a quick call, and they were always, no matter how many times I had to call them, whether it's late night or early in the morning when they're traveling, I mean, they were always there to support me, and that's helped me tremendously. And then as far as, staying on top of things and staying ahead of the curve, I mean, I have direct communication with my reps now. I continue to have direct communication, going to shows, just subscribing to various publications in the industry. Rev being one of those. I'm on several Facebook groups just trying to see what issues people are running into. Obviously, I still get those customer calls, so I hear, I mean, there's always new issues or questions that people have, and that kind of stuff helps keep me up to speed on what's going on in the industry, and then just staying up to date on products and whatnot as those are being released, and just trying to engage myself as much as possible in all areas, and that's really helped me continue to grow and stay on top of things.
Love it. That's awesome. Yeah, there's luckily, I think, anywhere now you look around and ADOS is everywhere, right? Our
Yep.
conversation, there's resources or information. Obviously, you got to kind of comb through some of the noise to get to the right information as far as what actually is kind of going on, but it's certainly out there and it can certainly be its own challenge in terms of staying ahead of that proverbial education curve, but it certainly benefits you guys in terms of having those candid conversations with shops. I'd give you the example here. A shop calls you and says, uh, "Hey, we were referred to you guys from somebody or from Rev or whatever." Like, what usually prompts that call? I guess is my first question here.
There's a few factors that go into play. I mean, one, everyone's in here to make money, and so finances play a huge role in that opportunity that people see there. A lot of times they may see, they're either outsourcing or just avoiding those calibrations altogether. So if they're outsourcing, they see how much they're paying, a third party for these calibrations. And they're like, well, I could be pocketing that. And, they bring their equipment in and they see that a lot of these guys can knock it out in 10, 15, sometimes it takes longer. A lot of they're knocking these calibrations out. They're paying several $100s per calibration for these. And like, well, shoot, I could do that myself.
Mhm.
And so that's one factor going along with the outsourcing as well It could just be inefficiency because you're not holding all of that in house. You're not controlling all of those variables. So you're relying on someone else and someone else's schedule to get them in house or to send those vehicles out to them. And it kind of screws with the whole workflow process. It can add a lot of delays. So between the profit and then just the efficiency of being able to do everything in house, that's typically what I see prompts the calls. Of course, there's OEMs. Obviously, OEMs are, there's more and more vehicles that are, yeah, requiring calibration. So that affects it as well. And then insurance, people, they want more documentation. These guys aren't doing the calibrations at all. They want to see insurance wants to see documentation of a repair being completed to OEM standards. So that plays a factor. But I think the biggest is the workflow process and the financials of that people are seeing. That's really what prompts the calls, most of the calls that I get.
Yeah, there's um, no shortage of sublet companies out there,
Mhm.
certainly. As for as many body shops there are out there, there's the growing side of the ADAS business. I mean, there's certainly some big players out there. You've got some of the bigger national MSOs that have got their own internal um, sublet process or internal company, if you will. Then you've got some groups out there that are bigger in size that don't have any affiliation to an MSO, but they've got a visibility in a lot of states. But then you've got a lot of independent folks, one, two, three person operations that there's challenge in obviously in suppression of price at this particular point for them to be able to continue for them to grow. So it makes it really difficult. And they're out obviously visiting a lot of these same shops that you guys are probably talking to. And there's sort of maybe an overpromise, underdeliver mentality where the shop is going, hey, if this is the level of service that we seem to get from a sublet, maybe it makes sense for us to bring this in house. So certainly lines up exactly with what kind of you're saying as far as a broken process. There's opportunity to kind of control that vehicle from start to finish, capture more revenue, not necessarily at all of that revenue kind of walk out the door, but and then you're exactly right on OEM side. I mean, it's requirements are continuing to increase. There's certainly still a lot of pushback from the insurance company, uh, more and more it seems like, but makes a lot of sense, I think, for a lot of shops to investigate this. So you kind of get through that initial conversation with them. Like, what does discovery look like? I mean, what do you guys kind of ask the shop to really find out? Are they kicking tires? Are they serious about this? What does that generally look like on your side, Will?
Yeah, so I typically and sometimes they will prompt this, I don't know, I don't have to ask it, but I kinda tell them, "Just tell me your story, what kind of a shop are you? What are you looking to accomplish?" And that typically prompts will say, I'm a collision center, I'm subletting all these calibrations, I'm tired of losing money." So that already right there, collision center, what type of shop they are automatically kinda tells me what package I should be focusing on. So for example, so Alltel they have a lane departure package that typically caters towards glass, automotive repairs, and they need a little bit more than lane departure targets. But if they say collision center, I immediately know that they will need all of the targets, or at least most of the most comprehensive package would be an all systems package. So that immediately allows me to narrow down what package when they tell me that. And then I start asking questions like, what kind of vehicles are you seeing? If, for example, for lane departure, if it's like a glass shop, if they just say, "Hey, I'm seeing mainly domestic vehicles. We don't really get a lot of, European or Asian stuff." Almost all of those are gonna be dynamic calibration. So I know right there, all right, they probably don't need a full ADAS package. We can kinda have that discussion, but, they probably just need a tablet to get started. They can always add the package later if they have more of that demand. So that's part of the process. If they are gonna do this calibrations in shop, what size? An all systems package, you can work within a relatively small amount of space, for what's included in those packages. But, there's additional oversized targets they don't include, where for, like, Ford, for example, they take a big oversized mat. It's a 25-foot wide by 40-foot long calibration. So just those little things that kinda tells me how I need to quote and what other questions I should be asking, down the line. How many texts is another important thing. Um, I kind of and throughout that, I can kinda get a sense of their budget as well and what they value. I may not initially push an IA 1000 if they're like, "Hey, I'm working with a really tight budget. I'm just trying to get my foot in the door, so maybe we start small." And maybe they need everything, but we need to start small to start. So just those little fact finding questions throughout kind of tell me how to pitch the conversation, how to pitch the product, and then I could quote accordingly from that.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, getting a massive amount of discovery obviously out of the way, I think is really critically important. I mean, there's certainly a lot of factors you have to consider on the shop side as well. Greg, I'd throw this question to you as far as, providing Will and his team with the right resources. I mean, what does that typically look like for you guys to help kind of overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah, so that's where we really work closely with Autel, and we do a lot of market research. We were talking, mostly on glass, and then we kind of segued over into collision. And as you mentioned, a lot of the collision investment is really based on the size of the shop, the number of technicians that are working on vehicles, and the overall volume. I think, and rightly so. A smaller body shop that may be doing 2, 3 cars a week would have a hard time justifying the investment in a full frame. They might do something with a dynamic calibration on a tablet because it makes sense as a return on investment there, but limited space because it's a smaller shop, not really having the volume to justify the investment may be an issue. Obviously, the larger those collision shops become, the more that ROI becomes available to them, right? And I think the biggest hole right now that we've done an educational piece on over the past year is really understanding how the MSOs need to invest in
Mm,
ADAS. I think that's the biggest question from a macro environment perspective is we talk to a lot of MSOs, we're in shops, and there's just not a lot of knowledge that there's no awareness that they actually need to make this investment. They just kind of look at it sometimes, not all, but
mhm,
they look at it as something that they really don't want to get into. They don't want to learn it. They don't want to make the investment. Unfortunately, they're leaving money on the table, number one. Number
yeah,
two, by ignoring it, I hate to talk about liability, but it's
yeah,
a factor that we have to take into
it's out there.
consideration.
Yeah,
There is potential liability if something were not calibrated correctly or wasn't calibrated at all and it to be done so. The billing entity to that customer is the one liable, regardless of whether you do it or it's sublet out. So we have a whole bunch of customers that do sublet work, and they do a really good job because we do the training, we do the support. If they have questions, we answer it. But there are other guys out there, and we've gotten reports on this from some of our manufacturing contacts. We don't see any of our guys doing this, fortunately, but they'll set up in a uneven parking lot and bright lights and doing all this crazy stuff, and it's not really the right environment for a calibration. But they think they're doing it okay. They think they're doing it correctly, or they don't see a code, so therefore they don't need to do a count. So there's just a lot of information out there, or lack thereof, that is causing people not to make the investment. So what we've done as an organization is really educate our team on those requirements, on those opportunities, on some of the liability issues, on the return on investment for every type of whether it's windshield, collision shop, or MSO, to make the right decision for their respective business because they're all different. And sometimes not making the investment does make sense.
yep,
Oftentimes, they really need to do it, but they really need to understand why. And Will's a great product expert, a lot better than I am right now for sure. Because I was actually the guy on the phones when we first opened it up and learned on the fly and did pretty good, but not like him.
changes, yeah,
Um but that's really been the point of emphasis from a business consultating perspective, because we can talk about product all day, but it's really what's the need, the demand, the return on investment, and then walking through the whole process that Will and his team go through in order to establish the exact tools based on those requirements and the opportunities. So there's a lot to it.
certainly. Yeah, I think again, my perception in some regards, not always, but I think a lot of shops think this is I buy a package or a unit, and it shows up, I get it out of the box, I set it up, I turn it on, I start calibrating immediately. All these
Mhm.
all these dominoes start to fall for me, but there's considerations of space. There's doing things properly, not doing them outside. There's a mix of static versus dynamic. Do I have the space to do, certain forward facing camera calibrations or round view monitors or things like that? I guess, maybe on the opposite end of this here, how do you help coach a shop through what a proper setup might look like? Like, what does that look like in terms of they come to you, Will, and say, "Hey, we've got this really level parking lot with a chain link fence. We think we can do stuff outside." I mean, I can envision what the answer probably is, but I'd love to hear, like, how do you sort of overcome that objection or that challenge?
Well, and that's the biggest thing when people say, I want a mobile system. Before we even get into all the details or anything like that, I always like to level set and say, hey, what you do with the equipment once you buy it from me is your business. But I'm going to tell you what Alltel and the OEMs are going to recommend, and that is that we would not ever recommend that you do anything in broad daylight in a open parking lot, anything like that. You want to have the more of those variables you can control, the better. That's really the best rule of thumb. So I love working with people that are setting up a shop specific to ADAS because then I can give them all of the recommendations that have been relayed down to me from Alltel. So not a bunch of noise in the background, toolboxes, stuff like that. That can all sometimes play an effect. And then one of my former ADAS reps, he always recommended banked dimmable LED lighting. So that
Mm,
allows you to control those lighting situations. Certain vehicles like a domestic or an Asian might not have as thick of a clear coat as a European vehicle. That clear coat's very reflective, or it can be very reflective if the vehicle's clean. So that all plays a factor. So just because a Toyota goes through in one light setting doesn't mean an Audi is going to go through in that same setting. So
great
being able
advice.
to
Yep.
control that on banks is huge. Again, not having a bunch of stuff going on in the background is another big factor, but really for a lot of these shops, it's just having the space itself. I mean, there's so many shop spaces that are not adequate, and so just that's really the biggest thing is having the space, and all that other stuff you can kind of start to work that in the background. And even if you don't have banked LEDs and stuff like that, there's still a lot of workarounds that may not necessarily look the best. But like you get an Audi in there, it's not calibrated. And you can hold a piece of cardboard in the back. Obviously not within the frame of the camera, but hold it out of the way to kind of block some of that light. I mean, there's a lot of little tricks like that you can get around, but the spacing is the biggest thing. To make sure you have that right out the gate. And then obviously, we don't want you calibrating outside. I'm never going to recommend that in good conscience, but some people do. I always level set it right out the gate if they say they want to be mobile.
I guess that's great to hear because, again, you guys are probably on some of the same social channels that I'm on, and I see where folks are maybe they're blindly naively doing things incorrectly, like Greg, like you say, maybe they just don't know any different, right? And then they get punished socially for doing something that they haven't been taught how to do properly. So um, it's interesting, and I think there needs to be a place that they can go to where they've got proper support and resources as far as that training goes. I guess my next thought or comment and question is around percentage of vehicles at a shop can calibrate. And do you guys have sort of a baseline that you from your customer base of shops got a certain amount of area they can do calibrations, or they've got a dedicated spot, and maybe they can do X% static and dynamics, and then they need to sublet out the rest. Maybe there's just too much volume. Maybe they don't have the ability to do that. Like, how do you guys typically handle something like that?
Yeah. Did you want to speak on that, Greg? Or?
I just want to add one thing to your question.
Yeah.
A lot of times, a shop, and we've seen this in the initial consultation, they envision that they need a really large space, and they need adequate space, but we really try to focus and get them to understand that they need workable space. And what's the difference between workable space and having a larger space?
Right. Yeah.
Well, the vehicle can move, right? You can pull the vehicle forward and backwards and to the left side and to the right side of the space allocation. So yeah, it takes a little bit more time. It's a little bit more cumbersome, but each calibration is independent of the other, right? So having workable space where, yeah, you know what, I might have to pull a car forward and back in order to complete what I need to do, but you still have the workable space to do it. You don't, Will's example, which is extreme but true, the all around view on the Fords and Lincolns and all, you can't do anything with that. That is a required space. That matters at one thing, but that's just one calibration amongst thousands of different applications on the vehicles that are out there. Most of them you can kind of work around and move the vehicle in the space allocation in order to complete the successful calibration therein.
It's a great way to put it, a workable space.
Yeah.
Yeah, making do with what you've got for room because you're right, each calibration's a little bit different in terms of setup, space that you need. certain environmental conditions and things like that. So I think that's another thing that in a lot of shops' minds is they need this massive amount of floor space. They need strict set of lighting standards. They need, they need all these things to line up perfectly for every single calibration. Calibrations can fail in those environments as well, just as much as they can in conditions that maybe aren't as conducive. But I love that term, workable space. I think that's something that shops are keenly trying to understand is, all right, I think I've got some area here. I've got an estimating bay that I can really make do with. And again, kind of going back to if I can get, if I'm subletting 100% out now and I can bring in 60% because of this workable area, or 50% mix of static and dynamics, and everything else goes where it needs to because of I just don't have enough workable space. Is that something you guys bring into the conversation, to try to understand really from a discovery standpoint? Obviously, you want to know where cars are going now if they are doing any calibrations. Um, if you've got any data you'd like to share on that, I'd love to hear it. If not, we can certainly move on to the next piece. But I'm curious if that's something you guys consider.
That's definitely a will question right there.
Yeah. I'll be honest, Joe, I haven't looked at the exact numbers. It's been a little while. One statistic I do remember is 95% of forward-facing calibrations can be performed within 13 and a half feet from the center line of the front wheel. So that frame position, 13 and a half feet. So these statistics surprise a lot of people. You think, oh, I've just got a small bay. They think they can't do very much. There's a lot that you can do. 20 by 30 space will do pretty much everything in an all systems package, which is amounts to it's over 90% of vehicles on the road in North America today. And then if you have a 30 by 50, which is going to allow you to have that forward surround view target, which Greg mentioned is like the most extreme example, at least right now, that we have for real estate involved with the calibration. That's going to put you into like 98, 99 percentile of vehicles you can calibrate on the road today. Again, the statistics may surprise a lot of people, but there is a lot you can do within that workable space, as Greg mentioned. You might have to get a little creative about moving stuff around and shifting the vehicle as needed. One other thing I wanted to touch on too, Alltel knows that most people don't have maybe the most ideal space for this, and they don't want to probably don't have the means to build a whole new shop. Their Baymax lift fits right into that conversation. If you
Mhm.
need to have you do your alignments and calibrations in the same bay, and you've got your 900 or 1000 to do that. The Baymax lift, when that's fully depressed and you mount it it's a flush mounted scissor lift, when that is fully flush mounted and fully depressed, you can move the vehicle. Everything's plated and covered. That lift essentially does not take up any real estate when it's not in use. So that works right into that conversation that of workable space because you can move that vehicle over the lift as needed if you got to move it for blind spot calibration or whatever the case may be.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Think that's some wonderful data to understand and have. And I can imagine that when you explain that to somebody that you can do a lot of forward facing cameras or radars within a certain, within 15 feet, let's just say, of that of the front of the vehicle. That I have to believe that there's some shock and amazement there. Like everything they're hearing is we need 30 by 40 and blah 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 and all this extra space, and you're actually able to now overcome that almost immediately with saying, hey, this is coming straight from the manufacturer of the equipment itself. So we've gotten through discovery. We've really understood exactly what the shop's doing, what their expectations are. We got kind of a mix of ideas of technicians, or like the number of technicians they've got, support, car volume and mix. And obviously considerations as far as like where they're going to be performing these calibrations. At least on the static side, I have to imagine ROI is a consideration, or a lion's share of your conversation or negotiation with the shop. What does that typically look like? I mean, if I'm investing in a 900 or an IA 1000 from Autel, and it's got a pretty significant price tag on it, and I give you a lot of this information preemptively as far as car counts and things like that. Like, how do you guys peel back that information so that they can understand like where that line in the sand is for ROI?
So we have an ROI calculator. We Alltel has one on their website, which I think was an excellent addition, and we were able to pull that data and integrate that on our website as well. So it's the exact same thing, all integrated right there, right on our website. But the numbers, so like I'm always blown away at the numbers every time I run them. I'll put in very conservative estimates as far as dollar amount per calibration, whether or not they're charging for pre and post scan. I usually don't even do anything with the SAS. There's options for SAS, relearn, alignment. I usually just ignore all that and just make it as conservative as possible. Almost always, it's well below a year with the conservative estimate with all of those numbers. It's incredible. And obviously, every situation is a little bit different. So that's why we have the calculator there. I share that with customers. They can plug it in, or I can plug those numbers in for them, and so they can see it firsthand. But it's incredible how quick that ROI can be. But just consistent use, whether you're doing 5 cars, 10 cars a week, 30 cars a week, it's incredible how quick that ROI can be on that equipment.
Amazing. Yeah, that's
I yeah,
great.
I can
Yes,
tell you as an
please.
entrepreneur, we certainly didn't wanna compete with our customer base, but, I've had some serious conversations 3 or 4 years ago about opening up our own sublet company to do that very thing. We decided that, again, we don't wanna compete with our customer base, and we just didn't wanna take on the burden of opening up yet another business. We already have quite a few, that we're running, so, but as far as I'm concerned, sitting here today, I left a lot of money on the table, I could tell you that. Seriously, if I were any of the, aforementioned, windshield guys, collision center, MSO, it's a no-brainer. If I had an opportunity just to go open up a company that did sublets alone, it's a no-brainer. Um, but yeah, if you run the numbers, it's amazing how quickly that big price tag, because it is, I mean, we're what's the average, Will, 20 grand on
Yeah,
average?
yeah, I'd average 20
Yeah,
grand.
on average. I mean, some are 70 and some are, 8. Just depends on what you wanna buy. But regardless of what you invest in, obviously the bigger shops, the higher the volume, they're gonna justify the larger purchase, but their volume and the amount of work that they're gonna do is gonna substantiate that investment, just like the guy who bought the $10,000 mobile frame, who's out there doing windshields or sublets or both or whatever the case may be. So it's amazing. And I talk to our customers and they usually have a huge smile on their face very, very quickly. It's amazing.
Do they typically like go into the conversation thinking that they're going to spend, you mentioned like 20,000 is sort of the average you guys see. Their expectation is maybe 2 or 3 times that. Is that typically the expectation? What is their general expectation as it relates to price as they have these conversations with you guys?
It really varies, based on their level of knowledge on the industry. I have some people that have a high volume body shop and they see an MA600 Core 2 package on our website for 9,500 bucks. And they say, "Oh, wow, I want that package. That one's, 9,500. I can afford that." And then there's other guys that they'll think that, you'll see a package and say, "Hey, I think I need this bigger package and I'm just doing glass." It's like, "No, you really don't need that." So it varies a lot. I mean, I think in general, they're expecting to spend at least 10 grand, pretty much all of them. But sometimes they're higher, low. It varies across the board, just depending on how much research they've done prior to making the call.
And one of the things I've seen that's surprising, and Will's given me this information, is that we have quite a few customers that want to upgrade the equipment. They
I was
made
just
the
going to ask
initial
about upgrading.
investment
Yeah.
in a base unit, the old standard red frame, whatever the case may be, or a mobile frame. All of a sudden, Autel's come out with some amazing technology with digital cameras and self leveling and all this other stuff. The integration with the lifts. They wanna upgrade and, they literally will spend $25,000 with us 6 months, a year ago, and now all of a sudden they're looking at a $50,000, $75,000 setup. That tells me everything I need to know right there, right? Everything I need to know. So it's an interesting dynamic, and the frames, even the mobile frames seem to be lasting fairly long. I mean, the life cycle of those things seems to be what, Will, 5, 6 years at least, maybe longer?
Oh, yeah, and there's replacement parts, and Alltel just
Mhm.
rolled out their latest rollout
Yep.
of that mobile frame program. They're doing 3 years warranty on all those parts just because there are some wear items that inherently don't last that long. But even if they fail outside of warranty, you can get replacement parts for much lower than the cost of a new frame. I mean, it's really not that bad. So it's fairly easy to keep those up and running if you take care of them.
See a lot of MA600 still out there in use.
Mhm.
A lot of folks that
It's a
are,
great frame.
yeah, doing mobile sublet. I mean, it's a workhorse, right? It's great to know that there is a part replacement program in place. So obviously those arms go up and down. They get wear and tear. Getting beat around from inside the shop or from inside vans as they are in transport. I think the ideal replacement Autel's eyes is the IA700, which is a little bit tougher to get in and out of a mobile van, but there are some folks that are actually doing it. They've configured some ways to get them lifted up into the back of a Ford Transit Connect and what have you. But um, no, that's great. I think that's the big thing that a lot of shops are looking at is, we know ADAS is in our shop. We know it's here. We see what we pay in sublet every month. We've got sometimes it's in some areas it's maybe a great experience with our sublet, but we're making considerations about how do we manage this in house. Or in other markets where I hear the 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 sublet experience is less than satisfactory. So that this brings them to a spot where they need to make considerations because so many cars coming through their shop need a calibration of some sort. So we've gotten really through sort of the front end of this, and now we've got to considerations as far as the financial pieces. Do you guys work with any financing arms at all? I mean, is that something of consideration where a shop's like, hey, I don't want to tie up a bunch of cash into equipment. Do you guys offer anything from a financing standpoint?
We do, yes. We work with a company called Vista Capital. The nice thing about them, I guess, just to backtrack a little bit, we used to have one-off companies. They were single source lenders, and they were great. I'd have, I'd usually have two or three at my disposal, sometimes more. Some would be, subprime credit loans. Some would be like A credit. But it just got clunky. Sometimes you'd hear one thing and then, they'd say their credit's one thing and then they get declined, or, it's just, or they'd see the rate and they'd say, oh, that's crazy. I don't want to pay that. And the nice thing now with Vista is they kind of bring all that into one. So they do all that work on my behalf. The customer only has to fill out one application, and then it's a soft pull on credit. So, they're not getting dinged on their, if they decide not to go that route, they're not getting dinged, but it'll shop multiple banks and they will find either the best rate or best odds of approval for that specific financial situation. So we've been really happy with them. They're integrated directly with our website, and I don't want to say they're experts in our equipment because that's our job, but they're used to working with our equipment and us. So it makes that a really seamless process for the customer when they fill out that application.
They're the best communication company from a finance organization I've ever seen. They do a good job of giving us visibility to the process, and in turn with the end user who's making the application themselves. So they really know what's going on. A lot of times it goes into a black hole, and Vista doesn't do that. It's
That's
really
awesome.
good.
Yeah. I can tell you I've worked in sales my entire life, and you could have the greatest product in the world, but if the transactional piece is a deep, dark black hole that you just don't know what's going on, doesn't matter how good your product or service is. If that transactional part of it is not fluid and seamless and transparent and smooth, as you guys know, it's certainly a bad experience for your customer or prospect, and they may ultimately just go a different direction. I think that's important to understand too, obviously, is that you guys partner with companies that have, you guys obviously have your customers' best interest in mind. They also do. They have a shared philosophy of providing a great service that obviously benefits them. It benefits you guys, but it ultimately benefits the customers that are buying the equipment itself. Um, Walk me through, like, all right, I've got my equipment. It's been shipped to me. Like, what does it look like, sort of post sale at this point? What can I expect from you guys?
Yeah, so that's we lean on Alltel a lot. It's a collaborative effort between us and Alltel. We're an e-commerce company at the end of the day. We're not always I mean, we do make occasional visits, but a lot of our stuff is done behind the scenes. So it's a collaborative effort, leveraging the relationships we have with Alltel to make that as smooth of a process for the customer as possible. Typically, my process when the customer orders the equipment, as soon as I get the shipment notification from Alltel, I am sending in a training request because the training is provided by Alltel. It's on-site training. But they've only got a few trainers to cover the entire country. They get backed up by a couple weeks typically. So to make that as quick of a process as possible, once I know everything's in transit, I submit the training request. Usually by the time the customer gets the equipment, or sometimes a little bit before, a trainer will have already reached out to that customer and set a training date. And then from there, I'm just in constant communication with the customer and then sometimes with the trainer if need be, just to make sure the customer has everything they need. Just yesterday, I had a customer that ordered they ordered a full kit about a week ago, and they're just starting to receive bits and pieces of it. But they got their tablet, they want to do a dynamic calibration. So I jumped right in. I got sent the customer a full video that showed them, a screen share of how that calibration went, from start to finish. And they still needed additional hand holding, which is fine. It's uncharted territory for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I got one of my contacts on Alltel on the phone, had them call him, walk him right through that whole process. So it's really a white glove treatment that we give the customer as far as that whole process goes. And again, it's not all us. We're leaning on Alltel for some of this, but we have a great relationship with them. They help us, and they do an excellent job helping our customers. And that's how we give the customer that experience at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and
And
there's
then,
there's only about a dozen distributors in the US and Canada that offer the free training. We're one of them. So if you buy from just anybody out there that's not on that short list, you're not gonna get free training.
and the training happens at their shop, correct? So the Autel trainer gets dispatched out to the shop. They help set up the equipment, walk the
Yep.
shop through.
They're
That's
here
that's
they're a
pretty
whole day, literally
yeah,
a whole day, and
yeah,
if it's a larger setup, they might be there 2 days.
that's awesome. And I know Autel also offers some 2-day training that they've got in some of their satellite shops and calibration centers throughout the
Yeah,
US as
they have
well.
4 locations around the country that they do, the Autel Academy that, goes from diagnostics to ADAS to, any different, keys, so on and so forth. So we have that schedule, and we can provide that to a customer, and actually sell them the, registration card or whatever you wanna call it, the participation card,
Awesome.
to get into that training.
Yeah, and I'll do that too as well. I mean, just to set up, make it easy on the customer. I'll enroll them. I had a customer that bought one the other day, and I went and enrolled him. He's on the schedule. Sent him his ticket just to make that as easy as possible. And then if that's an Alltel certification, that is not an industry certification. So
Mhm.
it trains you on the equipment and
Yep.
everything. But I have customers that say, "Hey, I want to get my L4, which is the ADAS certification for ASC." I have a customer out in California that hosts classes specific to that. They do train on Alltel equipment, but they're specific for that L4 and training. Giving it's set up similar to Alltel where they do a classroom and then a day of hands on, but it's all catering towards getting that L4. So if they need additional resources from a training perspective, we have those also.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah, because that's the key, right? Is we've got the equipment, we need to understand how to use it, and it's ongoing, right? This stuff
Absolutely.
continues to change and evolve and move really, really fast, and the more we can kind of bear to that training side of it and the education, the better that we're at in terms of when things fail or how to overcome certain challenges and or for nothing else too, recognizing when calibrations need to be done because I think that's still a critical and important piece. Um, Last couple of things here, guys. I really appreciate this. This has been tremendous. And again, I think, uh, again, with the amount of shops that are actively thinking about, um, where does this fit into what we business model standpoint of bringing some equipment in house, I think this can help draw a lot of conclusions for them. So I certainly appreciate this. Question for you both here is like what tools do you think are evolving fast? Like what innovations are coming in calibration hardware and software that shops should look out for in the next year or so?
Yeah, I could start on that. I'd say the biggest thing from a calibration perspective is just more and more automations. We saw that with the 900. Well, first it was a standard frame, and they added the cameras option to that, and then they started selling them with the cameras. So that took that was a huge leap in the industry as far as taking a lot of that time and energy out of the calibration setup process. There was no automation as far as where the targets were set or compensating for unevenness in the ground, and that's where over time, the more and more R&D they put into it. That's what went into the 900 frame, which it has a self-leveling crossbar, so it'll adjust for those variances in the ground. It'll set the targets correctly, with the press of a button. No manual input to do that. The 1000, which just was released, it was released at SEMA last year, wasn't made available for sale to the public until spring of last year, or of this year rather. But we saw more and more automation with that. So, still with the 900, those fine tuning adjustments that you have to make, those were still manual. Whereas that 900, you more or less just get it into place and it does the fine tuning, the target set. compensation for the grout, all of that's done by the frame automatically. So that's I think we'll continue to see more and more of that. As far as the tablets go, we just had a whole round of tablets that have been released. So all of Altel's legacy ADAS tablets, 909, 919, and Ultra. We have Series 2 versions of all of those. And those were actually just made public, I believe yesterday. Those went live on our website. So those are now available. One of the biggest things from a tablet, obviously, it's like when a computer gets old, you need to upgrade it. So you're getting those standard upgrades in a tablet anytime there's a new tablet comes out. More storage, better processor, so on and so forth. The one thing that I saw, one feature I saw them add that I think is going to come in handy for these calibrators is DVI. Stands for Digital Vehicle Inspection. So when you're doing your walkarounds, you're taking pictures. There's an AI tool built into that allows you to basically detect damage that maybe the human eye or just in that quick process you didn't necessarily see that dent or that scratch. DVI is going to detect some of those hidden damages, if you will, just to better cover yourself throughout that whole process. That's one of the biggest innovations I've seen. But again, with the frames, just more and more automation. I think whenever the next frame comes out, I think we'll see even more of that on the new one.
Greg, you wanna add anything into that else,
No,
Rick?
Will did a great
Yeah,
job, and like I said, he is so much closer to the product side nowadays than I am. I defer to him on that one.
I love it. No, that's great, that's great. Yeah, I think the adage of yeah, obviously with the MA600s, there's a lot of manual procedure and process as far as the static calibrations go with tape measures and, uh, chalk line and things like that, and for some shops, that's just their best process, but for those that are looking at, potentially upgrading, I think automation is you're right on, Will, that being able to now take and give back some time from the setup process. You go from half hour, 45 minutes of setting up the, camera calibration on a Subaru to now where you can do that in literally just a few minutes and a push of a button, it's in place and calibration's completed. I mean, it again, knowing that time is money in this industry, touch time is the most important thing as far as driving revenue goes. So I think that's uh, right on as far as uh, some of the big advances that I've even seen too. I'm really just amazed at what like Autel specific has been able to do with the 1000. Everything's a digital screen, no more targets taking up space in the shop. So um, be really interested to see how well that goes for them. But um, what's one question you wish more shop owners would ask before they buy equipment?
It's not necessarily a singular question, but it's more of the train of questions, or what they're focusing on. And that's, that they focus more on the ROI and not the initial cost. Because I get a lot of people that will see, "Oh, I need a $30,000 kit, or I need a $40,000 kit just based on my fact finding. I'll tell you, hey, here's 1 or 2 options I recommend." And they balk at that. And then I get other customers where they say, "Hey, that's a lot of money, but I see the value in this technology and how quick and efficient and how much this is gonna streamline my operations." Every time I hear that, it's like a breath of fresh air for me. It's like, this is my ideal customer because, you're a value, and this is where we see that value, and I'm glad that you appreciate that. And also that they recognize the value that we offer. Like, we may not be the cheapest person on the market. You could shop online and find an unauthorized dealer that maybe has stuff for a little bit less. But when you recognize the value that we offer by supporting you through that entire process, that's another thing that I come to really appreciate. With talking, having these customer interactions.
Awesome.
Yeah, and to add on to that, there are other distributors out there, but one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is we have a very, very small, product line offering, and we do that intentionally. We really specialize in diagnostics, ADAS, key programming, key cutters, those types of things that are capital equipment, require a lot of training and support. And it's really hard to be experts at the consultative part of the sale to make sure the customer is buying the correct thing, making sure that everything works correctly when it's delivered, and the training, and then the ongoing support. I mean, just finding a replacement part for an MA600 can be very difficult. I've,
Yep.
I've gone through the process. They made it a little bit easier now, but 3 or 4 years ago, it was hard.
Yeah.
Or any issues, RGA issues, whatever the case may be, or just having that direct conduit to the manufacturer. Because I can tell you, we don't just consider Autel um, a supplier. We're actually really good friends with those guys as well. We socialize with them. One of their main guys used to work for me at a different organization, so I've known this guy for 15 years. And we just have a great relationship. All those things matter when you're making an investment like this because we
Certainly.
have the expertise to consult to get you in the right product, make sure that it's delivered and trained on correctly, and then make sure it's supported correctly, especially if there's an issue on the back end. And you don't get that from everybody. There's some great competitors out there that we deal with. We're friends with some of those guys too. It's hard for somebody who's selling 400, 300 product lines to be an expert at anything. We are. That's
Yeah,
our difference.
the pool is way too deep at that particular point to
Yeah,
know
yeah.
all the different variables because that stuff gets updated so fast as well. It's you're a master of really nothing at that particular point. So I think that's great that you guys point that out is keep the focus where it needs to be at, stay on top of your game as far as understanding what those things can do and being able to relay that back to the shops as they're making those considerations. But um question to both of you, if you could spend 5 minutes with any shop owner in the country, what advice would you give them?
I've already given it.
No, I appreciate it. That's good.
No, no, no,
Anything I mean,
seriously.
outside of, like, ADAS and equipment, I mean,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah, so the number one thing and a lot of the, automotive MSOs have done this, if anybody from the commercial vehicle world is watching this, we've done a lot of work in the past with, the intake process and triage diagnostics to understand, the true, cause of the complaint and the appropriate correction. Right. Also, the way to upsell additional jobs by looking at a total diagnostic routine for whatever vehicle or equipment you're looking at or working on, to give that customer all the information outside of the complaint, if necessary, for them to make a service decision as well. I've worked as a consultant with Mac and Volvo trucks for years, Navistar, some of the independent uh, repair facilities like formerly Dickinson Fleet Services, now Cox, on intake processes. Even some of the larger leasing companies like Ryder. We've worked very extensively in past organizations and in our organization with that intake process to really understand the vehicle health or the equipment health on the intake process and develop not just an intake protocol internally, but a communications protocol externally with the customer to get the approvals on any collateral work that may be out there that they didn't even know about most of the time.
mm, yeah,
Right. So that's my biggest piece of advice is that diagnostic tool and that process is really a conduit to make more money and to do your customer the right service because there's nothing
right.
worse than a shop fixing something. It goes out and the customer's upset within a week later because it's broken again. It may not even be the same issue, but they're like, why didn't you fix it while you had it?
Yep. Yeah, that's great advice.
Hard
That's
to follow that one up, but, mine will be a little bit more granular, but, just look at when you're looking at a capital equipment purchase, back to what I was saying before, I mean, just look at the bigger picture. Don't just look at the upfront cost. Obviously, look at the ROI and see what that, return can be, because just because something might require, investment in a new employee and, obviously a upfront cash investment on the equipment, just because it might be a little difficult up front, doesn't mean there can't be a huge return down the road, over time once you start putting that equipment into use.
great advice. I really appreciate it. So hopefully we'll see you guys out at SEMA.
Yep.
Um, Great to connect, obviously, out there. Good opportunity to meet a lot of folks. This has been tremendous information. It seems like, again, this is a hot topic. We could probably sit here and talk for hours on end on different strategies and all the different types of connections and the questions that shops are probably thinking about in their heads as we speak and as they listen to this podcast. So, um, again, gentlemen, I really appreciate your time and insight on this. It's been tremendous to learn this, even more so from what I already knew, which isn't a lot, but it's always good to hear from my end as well. So, um, before we get you out of here on this, tell us where can a shop find you guys? Like, where are you guys located at in terms of in the web worlds and how do they get in contact with you?
Well, we're at triad-ds.com. One thing I'll add, and again, thank you for this opportunity, but we've had a partnership now for I don't know what 6 months maybe, and all of our tools, ADAS calibration tools, include a 30-day trial to your services. Which I tell you, when we've dealt with some larger MSO national organizations and had the conversation that I had previous about the lack of knowledge of when they actually need to do a calibration. And when we had initial conversations with you and your team and the founder, I think 2 years ago now, as you guys were developing the software, I said, "Oh, this is the answer." And we were excited as heck to find out that you guys really have the tool and the information that all these repair shops need to connect the dots, because that's the biggest hole in this whole thing is how do I take a vehicle in and understand that, oh, if I do this repair, I've got to do a calibration. We didn't have the answer. And we were always looked at as how do we find that out? We didn't have any information. Now we do with you guys. So thank you very much. We appreciate the partnership, and we're excited that we can offer that back out to our customers as a free trial in order to promote the service and really show them how to capitalize on a much higher ROI after they make the investment. You guys, you're the glue that holds it all together.
We appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that proverbial relationship between software and hardware. It's the they certainly help each other out, no question about it. So again, that's triad-ds.com is your website.
Correct.
Again, Greg, Will, appreciate you guys spending some time with us today. This has been majorly helpful. Again, continued success to you guys. We'll have to get you back on because I know you guys have got some tools that help on the heavy duty truck side as well. I'd love to pick your brains on that in a separate episode at some
Yeah,
point down the
that's a burgeoning market right now.
Absolutely.
So
Again, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we will be chatting with you guys soon again. Thank you.
Thank you,
thanks.
Joel.
Take care, Joel.